Okay, technology is finally caught up with us. Usually it's the other way around. Ms. Gray, who is the person behind TAMG, has reached out. I think Ms. Godfrey and Mr. Morris, you were copied on most of those emails, but she's been reaching out to Ms. Niles, explaining her situation. TAMG is without counsel right now. Their lawyers were allowed to withdraw several weeks ago, and Ms. Gray indicated that she's not in a position right now to retain counsel, and she wasn't sure how she herself would represent TAMG, which of course she cannot unless she's a lawyer. I'm noting that she is not on the Zoom link, although it was provided to her. She's not here in court. We will proceed. TAMG would have to sit mute, stand mute. I don't know what we would say without counsel. So Ms. Gray is welcome to join virtually or in person should she decide to do that. And I would certainly hear from her, but it would be more in terms of just appreciating her perspective as opposed to Ms. Gray being a legal representative of and spokesperson for TAMG. So I'm prepared to go forward unless you have some concern, Ms. Godfrey, about proceeding without Ms. Gray here or a official legal representative of TAMG.
We're prepared to go forward, Your Honor. Well,
let's do it. Let me provide my thumbnail understanding of where we are so that maybe you can streamline what you're going to do. TAMG entered into an arrangement with your clients for radio advertising, and for a number of months paid its invoices as there were ads run for TAMG. As we got into 2021, invoices weren't paid anymore. Presumably services were rendered, but invoices weren't paid. There's already summary judgment from Judge Baxter, a senior judge who handled motion for summary judgment on some of your claims. Judge Baxter found there were some questions of fact surrounding the Frank Ski part of the arrangement. And so I guess we'd be working through those today. My understanding is that you are seeking a principal balance of just over $560,000. Then there'd be interest and attorney's fees that we'd need to work through. Judge Baxter did not grant summary judgment on attorney's fees, and he left open this question of the open account claim on the Frank Ski endorsement agreement. So we do have some things to work through, but there are also certain things that are somewhat set in stone through Judge Baxter's ruling.
Yes, Your Honor, that's correct. For purposes of today, we are planning to only go forward as to count 1 and count 2 of the complaint, the claims that Judge Baxter granted a summary judgment on, which essentially the shorthand version converts today's proceeding to a damages hearing as to those claims, if that suits the court.
Well, it does if we have an understanding that you're abandoning the other claims. We're not going to come back later on. This is the trial. And so if you are limiting what you're going to pursue to be counts 1 and 2 and the summary judgment order, that are you Ms. Gray? Yes, sir. Hey, Ms. Gray, you can sit if you want. You're welcome to sit right there, but that table is for you. If we're focusing on his summary judgment order, that's great. I just didn't want you to think that we'd come back on another day to look at the remaining counts.
We understand where we are procedurally, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, let me get Ms. Gray up to speed, and then I'm interested in having you proceed. I'm Judge McBurney. You're Ms. Gray. Thank you for being here.
Good morning.
Good morning. I was explaining to Ms. Godfrey and Mr. Morris, who are the lawyers here from the firm of Polzinelli representing Cox, that we're going forward today. I did review some of the communications you've had with Ms. Niles, my staff attorney, about some of the financial and other struggles you've been working through, Ms. Gray. I appreciate those very much and am not insensitive to them. This is a lawsuit that's been going on now for a couple of years. and you had lawyers working on behalf of your company for a while. They have withdrawn. And what I heard just before you came in from Ms. Godfrey is that Cox is now limiting itself and today's proceedings to the claims that a judge already granted summary judgment on while your company was still represented. So in other words, these are issues where lawyers on both sides did battle. And Judge Baxter, who is a former colleague of mine, he's what we call a senior judge. He handled that. So he heard from both sides and he said, based on all that, I'm granting summary judgment, meaning I'm finding factually that there is an obligation on TAMG's part to pay for these unpaid invoices. And really what we're working through today is not the Frank Ski endorsement, because Judge Baxter found that Cox did not prevail in that motion on the Frank Ski endorsement issues. And if I'm telling you things you don't know about, I don't know about them either. I'm just reading from the complaint that was filed and your lawyer's responses back when they were representing you. So Ms. Godfrey has said, you know what, Judge, we're just going to keep it focused. Judge Baxter already said, in effect, Cox wins in terms of who is liable to whom. TAMG is liable to Cox for these open account claims, not the Frank Ski part, but the other part. And so today is effectively what we call a damages hearing. It's a trial, but really what is at dispute now isn't who owes whom. Judge Baxter already said, when you still had lawyers, TAMG owes Cox. The question is how much, and that's what we're going to work through today. I will hear from the lawyers representing the two corporations that sued your company. I'll engage you some, but as I think you picked up in some of the email traffic, unless you are licensed to practice law in Georgia, and from my review, you're actually skilled in many ways and have a lot of different enterprises, but a law firm is not one of them, then you are not in a position legally, I don't mean capability wise, because I bet you've got a lot you want to say, but legally, you cannot speak on behalf of TAMG. Corporations, limited liability corporations, incorporated businesses in Georgia have to have lawyers speak for them, speak as in when they file motions, which your previous lawyers did, and when they're in court talking about things. That doesn't mean you're not going to get to say anything. I'm going to engage you at certain phases to make sure you understand what's going on. And I'll be interested to hear a little bit your perspective. It's just not something legally I can weigh. And so just to give an example, if Ms. Godfrey presents an invoice from Cox for $100,000, you don't get to present a check saying, look, I paid that, because that's something that a lawyer would have to do. So you are here to participate fairly passively, but I will from time to time check in with you. And at the very end, of course, I'll hear whatever it is you have to say. It's just, I can't give it legal weight, but I can certainly process your perspective on all this. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I appreciate you being here. Ms. Godfrey, when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to hand the proceeding over to Mr. Morris, who's going to call our first witness.
Well, that was the easy lift for you. All right, Mr. Morris, I assume you're going to call Ms. Carson.
I am, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Carson, if you'd come up to the witness stand, you'll get sworn in and right there.
Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm that testimony you give will be true, the whole truth, nothing but truth, so help you God. You may have a seat. State and spell your name for the record.
Gail Carson, GAYLE CARSON.
Your Honor, just from an administrative standpoint with our exhibits and everything, obviously we have the electronic versions and hard copies. How do you prefer? I've never had a hearing with both, I suppose.
Sure. So I'll need you, I would ask that once you've tendered something, if you'll share the screen so that I and Ms. Gray and the witness and anyone watching remotely can see the exhibits we're talking about. Ultimately, you'll want to tender and provide to Ms. Adamson the hard copies, because that'll be part of the official record you're making. You all are having this taken down. And so Ms. Adamson will be the keeper of the exhibits. You don't need to give me extra copies. If they'll be on the screen, then I can see it. You may have already sent them to Ms. Niles, in which case I've got them electronically anyway, but I don't look at exhibits till they're admitted. So I'll wait till you do that. It's often easier if you've got a stack of records that you know Ms. Carson is familiar with. If you say, I'm going to give you exhibits 1 to 10, could you quickly flip through those so she can say, these are all business records that we keep in the ordinary course of business. And then you tender en masse those 10. Once they're in, then you can bounce amongst them in any way you want. And once they're in, you can publish them in any way you want.
Yes, sir.
Does that make sense?
It does, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
You look through exhibits 1 through 6.
That's the clicking, Mike.
Actually, I'm just going to have to go for 1 through 5. I think exhibit 6 might need a little more. If you could just identify each of those exhibits for the record, and then confirm that these are all documents that Cox produces in the ordinary course of business.
Before you do any of that, could you tell me who you are in connection with Cox?
Yes, I'm Gail Carson. I am Senior Manager of Accounts Receivable.
What does that mean you do?
Our accounts receivable team does everything for accounts receivable, from setting up new accounts, granting credit, billing, cash application, and collections. My emphasis is on collections and credit.
So if I am a customer of yours and paying for services you provide, you'd be in a position to see what I owe, what I've paid, what's past due, all that kind of stuff, because those are accounts receivable for Cox and you're the senior manager there. Okay. Now you can do whatever he asked you to do with exhibits 1 through 5. You should do those things.
Ms. Carson, we can just go through, if you could just read out the title of each exhibit, and then if you could confirm that these are all records that Cox does produce and has produced in the ordinary course of business, please.
Okay, exhibit 1 is a proposal TAMG Realty 2021 digital campaign that was presented and agreed upon to TAMG Realty, and it has our ordinary terms and conditions on the back. Exhibit 2 is a mid-year review of the digital campaign that was done between our sales team and the TAMG staff to go through what our company has provided, what the results have been, and some suggestions on what might be done to improve it.
A digital campaign, I assume maybe incorrectly that what TAMG had purchased was radio advertising. Was it more than that? Digital says to me, I might be online and here's something touting TAMG services because Cox controls that online portal.
It is one of that. The primary emphasis on this was online with search engines and optimization, Facebook, YouTube, their website, and then we enhanced it or bumped it with radio advertising.
And does the former mean that TAMG would say, here's our website, could you make it pop up in searches more? Or you're saying that Cox owns a search engine, and if someone were to search for, I want a great real estate agent, because TAMG had a contract with you all, that is an answer that would come up in the search?
We don't own search engines.
I didn't think so.
But we work with them. They are a vendor who helps our clients.
Okay.
We help our client, first of all, develop their website if we think improvements could help. And then we do the things you suggested about this would make you rise to the top more in.
Okay. So that's part of the campaign. It's not simply at the top of every hour on WSB radio or whatever it is that Cox owns, we'd hear an ad for TAMG. That was part of it, but it was more so, hence the name, digital focus, so that TAMG's online presence would be improved and enhanced and expanded. Okay.
And Ms. Carson, I believe you are on exhibit number 3, which is the
Spot Manager is, this is produced by our software that schedules advertising on the radio. And this is a list of the TAMG commercials that aired on January 4th. It shows the client, the day of the week, the time it aired, the length of the commercial ID. They may have multiple running, and the rate of the commercials, how much each commercial costs.
And those again are produced in the ordinary course of business at Cox. Okay. And if you go to exhibit 4, explain what that document is, or documents.
Yeah, exhibit 4, these are the invoices produced by Cox in the ordinary course of business. You'll see that orders are put in separately for digital and for each radio station. And because of that, anytime there's a separate order, there is a separate invoice. So the first invoice shows.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but we'll just go over a broad overview and then we'll get into everything. So if you wouldn't mind moving on to number 5, titled cash statement.
It's a statement of everything that is due to Cox Media Group from this particular or any particular advertiser. In this case, it's TAMG, and it summarizes all invoice numbers by station or digital.
And all 5 of these documents are all business records that Cox again produces in the ordinary course of business.
Right.
Your Honor, at this time I'd like to, mass introduce exhibits 1 through 5.
They are admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Gray, do you have hard copies of these, or they'll be up on the screen? I haven't seen them yet, but anything we're going to be talking about now that it's been admitted, is that screen on in front of you?
Yes, but there's no copies on the screen.
No, there shouldn't. Now you should see Ms. Carson's face. Okay.
I don't have hard copies.
Okay. Do you have an extra set, Mr. Morris?
I do, Your Honor.
Great.
Thank you.
Ms. Carson, good morning. We've already gotten into your background a little bit. Just want to expand upon that a little bit. How long have you been with Cox?
28 years.
And tell me a little bit about your education background before and after you started working with Cox.
I went to college and got a bachelor's degree in communications in my early 20s, and then I went back to college in my 40s because I wanted to sit for the CPA exam. So I took the additional accounting business course, is required, sat for and passed the CPA exam, but I'm not a certified public accountant. In order to get the certification, at least at that time, I had to work directly for a CPA. And honestly, I didn't want to leave my job at Cox.
Okay. And in your current role as a senior manager with accounts receivable, how long have you been in that position?
10 years.
Tell me just a broad overview of when your department kind of gets involved with clients at Cox.
Yeah, we have collector. If you're talking about from a collection standpoint.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
We have collectors who, the accounts are divided alphabetically, and we have 6 collectors who work the accounts. Typically, I don't get involved until it gets a little bit older or a lot bigger. We have regular meetings. Our collectors call clients or email clients before they hit 90 days. Our published terms are 30, but in this business, it's not unusual for it to go 60 or 90. So the collection strategy is start with the oldest and the biggest and work our way down. So we may or may not be able to call clients when they hit 60 if it's 90.
Okay. Moving on to the case at hand, how and when did Cox and TAMG begin working together?
TAMG began advertising with Cox in, I think it was March 2020. It was early 2020.
And when you say advertising with that, for old schoolers, again, connotes we ran print ads and radio ads, but really in this modern era, this era now, it also included the digital campaign.
Yes.
So advertising with would mean relied on the services that Cox could provide to promote the web presence.
That's correct. And I don't know specifically what was advertised or what campaigns were aired in 2020.
Okay. But March 2020 is when you think it
March 2020
Okay.
is when we developed a relationship with the client.
And when TAMG first came to Cox for services, tell me about the credit process.
When they first started with us, they paid what we call CIA, cash in advance. And then at some point, I think it was in July of 2020, they decided they wanted to apply for credit. So we went through that process where they fill out a credit application. And when I say fill it out, it's online. It's a digital process. They completed the credit application. We did the necessary work. We look at references, and we also have credit reporting services that we use. They're similar to Dun & Bradstreet. We don't use D&B. We use Credit Safe and MediaWise.
And did TAMG pass its credit check?
Yes, credit was granted.
For 2020, for that year, what's the status of payment from TAMG?
All invoices that for campaigns that aired in 2020 and billed were paid. Although typically this client was a late payer. It wasn't unusual for it to be 90 to 120 days. And I think that the December 2020 invoice ended up being paid in April 2021.
But in the end, all of the 2020 invoices were paid. I guess when it was cash in advance, there wouldn't be an invoice. You had to pay to get services, but soon enough, TAMG was approved to pay on credit, or whatever term we'd use. In other words, they'd be invoiced and ultimately would pay, but it was not uncommon for it to be past the understood deadline.
That is correct. And they did indeed pay all of their 2020 invoices.
Okay. Were there late fees assessed, or if I paid on day 91 an original invoice of $1,000, it was still just $1,000?
It was still just $1,000.
And Ms. Carson, I am going to jump ahead a little bit here, but since that question was posed, when does Cox, I guess, make the decision to charge interest on a past due account?
As a rule, we don't unless we have to involve third parties to collect. And that's unusual. But if a client pays late, we take the principal amount and that is all that is expected.
And when you say a third party, what do you mean?
I mean, an attorney or a collection agency.
Did that happen in this case?
Yes, it did.
If you wouldn't mind, I'm gonna, Your Honor, if I may share my screen.
Sure.
Ms. Carson, I'm gonna have you take a look at Exhibit 1, please. Can you please tell me what this document is?
Yeah, I need someone to help me. There's a place here that it's got this thing.
Yeah, what does it say on it? What are the two boxes?
To stay muted or unmute.
Click, press, it's a
Oh, I can
touchscreen, stay mute. And got it. Okay, excellent. You're welcome. And this is actually a touch screen. I don't know that we'll need it because we're a small group here, but it's possible for Ms. Carson to circle things if there's something that you're having trouble drawing either my attention or her attention to. You could circle if you know how to do that on your laptop, but the witness can touch the screen to mark something up.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mhm.
Technology. All right, Ms. Carson, I think we're gonna figure this out together as we go through. So bear with me. Can you tell me what this document is, please?
Yes, this was a proposal and agreement for the TAMG Realty 2021 digital campaign.
And if you
Campaign
could,
for the year.
if you could just tell me when it was signed.
Signed by the client and a Cox Media rep on January 11, 2021.
And you discussed earlier how the digital campaign provides a host of services. Would you just read out what those services are, please?
Yes. KISS FM, which is a radio station, as is WSB. Those are the two radio stations. In addition, paid search, paid Facebook, YouTube, reputation management and digital location management, SEO, which is search engine optimization, CRO, conversion rate optimization, research, and then a grand total.
And if you would, please, just at the bottom right where my cursor is, could you read out that grand total, please?
Yes, the grand total for the year was $711,007.68.
And as well as the services listed, were there any other extra steps that Cox would take when working with TAMG?
Yes. I know our sales team worked closely with TAMG to come up with other things that might help them. I remember that they introduced her to someone at the Chamber of Commerce, thinking the chamber might be a good way for her to help get better known in the community. They introduced her to an attorney at some point. I think they helped her find an employee even, but these were not things that were part of what we agreed to do.
And obviously the total runs throughout the year. When did Cox cease providing services?
It was early August of 2021.
I'm going to scroll down to paragraph 11 of the terms and conditions. Can you see that on your screen? If you would, please, just read this right where my cursor starts, all payments. And this is paragraph 11 titled Payment.
All payments are due within 30 days of the applicable invoice date, unless otherwise provided for in the order, whether single or recurring, and may be due in advance of the performance of the services.
And would you just read that next sentence as well, please?
CMG may assess interest of 1.5% per month or the highest rate permitted by law, if less, on any overdue balance unless disputed in writing and in good faith by advertiser within 30 days of the date of the applicable invoice, or if a shorter period is prescribed for payment before the payment due date.
How many of the past due invoices were disputed by TAMG within that time period?
None.
And Ms. Carson, give us an overview of what TAMG and Cox's goal was for the digital advertising campaign.
Well, obviously, we wanted to help a grow our business. We wanted to develop more name recognition, brand identity, and generate leads for our business.
Does Cox guarantee results? I'm going to turn your attention now to Exhibit 2. Would you please tell me what this document is?
Yes, this is, as you can see, it's for TAMG, Campaign Performance and Insights, mid-year. It's basically a recap of what has happened in the first half of the year, what we've learned for it, the results, what suggestions might be made.
And this document was created contemporaneously with a meeting with Cox and TAMG, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
And that's standard practice.
That is standard practice. The sales person or sales team would meet with the client to go over it.
And why does Cox provide this service?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, the digital is so funny. It's, you know, with radio, you can hear exactly when it plays. In digital and searches, it's hard to see. And it gives the client an opportunity to see and learn more of what their campaign has produced.
So is it fair to say there are some results or metrics contained in these documents?
Absolutely. There are lots of statistics and metrics to show how we've done.
I'm just going to scroll through some of these. First, I want to bring your attention to, I believe it's page 19 of the document. This is entitled TAMG Realty plus CMG, our partnership. Would you briefly explain this slide for us, please?
Sure. Our stance is that when we work with clients to help them, obviously we're a business and we want to make money and we want to sell advertising. But if we don't help them, it's going to be short-lived. So we work hard to develop partnerships, and we do see it as a partnership where CMG has responsibility to do X, Y, and Z, and then the client has responsibility to do ABC.
So you're saying it benefits CMG to have results for their clients?
Yes, absolutely. It does.
I want to just bring your attention to a couple of these metrics. And again, these are all provided for by your team. We'll start here. Could you explain what this slide is?
Yeah, this one slide addresses the paid search performance, how that campaign worked for the client. You can see that in the first part is how many impressions, that second column, and it's broken down by the type of the demographics of the person, if you will, how many actual clicks there were. And the next one, you can see that 219 phone calls were generated based on the paid search performance, 65 contact form submissions, over 2,300 viewed property listings. The next one shows there were 18,600 and something new website visitors as a result of this.
And for the record, this is page 13 of the digital review, the mid-year review. And that is just for one.
That's for one element of the digital campaign.
And Cox do this for all of the various elements in this document.
Yes.
All right. I want to move on to radio advertising for a second. Can you just go over how Cox documents and accounts for the advertisements that it does run on air?
Yes, we have software basically that does that, what we call traffic systems. And when a commercial runs on the air, it is documented by a system. We produce, it's automatically produced the spot manager reports that can be reviewed at any time. And then that information is carried over to the invoice when it's generated, so that for radio advertising, the client can see exactly what, when, where, it aired.
Are those ever produced to the client?
Spot manager reports, typically not, but if we have a client who asks for it, we will provide it.
You know if they were provided to TAMG?
Yes, they were.
And turn your attention to Exhibit 3. Could you tell me what this document is?
The spot manager that's generated by the computer system. And you can see this is giving information on the TAMG Realty ads that aired on January 4th, 2021. It shows the advertiser, the AD, the order number, each order in our system has a number, who the advertiser is, the day of the week, the time that the commercial aired, the length of the commercial. In this case, it's a 30-second spot. The ad ID, if there are multiple ads running, each will have a different ID, and the rate of each of those spots, and a grand total for that day, for that time period.
So this means if I was listening to WALR FM, excuse me, at 1:45 in the afternoon, I would have heard an ad for TAMG that has the phrase in it or is something about no matter who you are, we're here to serve you. Big, small, little, white, black, male, female. This is the real estate firm for you.
That's right.
Okay. Who was
Yeah, they have other messages they want to get out as well.
Sure, we'll get you to the closing table. Here's the realty story. I don't know what iBone is, but either way, I don't need to know the content. My other question was, is another thing that TAMG paid for the content, or TAMG would have provided the content? In other words, a different vendor for Ms. Gray and her company would have been the copywriter who put together whatever, no matter who you are, whatever that script is.
And I'm not sure, I can tell you that Ms. Gray did not have an advertising agency working with her. It's what's called a direct account. That's why it's that D after their name.
Mm-hmm.
And typically with a direct account, our sales team or our creative team will help develop the copy,
Okay.
but not at additional cost.
Okay. So, and it doesn't really change anything we're working through, but it could be that a service that was provided was helping TAMG craft the language for these different ads. Okay.
And just to confirm, that same information on the spot manager, is that found on the invoices as well?
Yes, that's exactly what's found on the invoices.
Is there something that was redacted, or what? Why does it list $560 a bunch of times with these lines that are slightly longer? Is that just pretty?
Yeah, no, it would have, the way this writes, you see at the top, the AE full name is all the way to the left.
Yep.
So that totals it by AE. The order number.
Oh, I see.
Order, and the grand total is the 560. But the way our system works, you may have an agency that has multiple advertisers and they need your subtotal. That's not the case here.
Got it. If Mr. Wright had been running ads for TAMG on several properties, then they'd all be listed in this spot manager. And that's why those bars stick out a certain bit, that it would separate out the different properties.
Yeah, probably not properties, probably more like time segments. You can
Okay.
buy radio in morning drive and afternoon drive or full rotation, but I think each property has its own spot manager.
Okay.
And Ms. Carson, I'll next go to the plaintiff's exhibit 4, which is the invoices. There are 42 pages of invoices in this document. Would you tell me what these are?
Yeah, these are invoices. We invoice monthly at the end of the month for the month that we just finished. And this particular invoice, you can see it was addressed to TAMG Realty. This one is for the pure digital part of the campaign, not the radio. And it's divided into dates and type of digital like SEM and audience extension. It has the invoice month at the top, the invoice date, and where payment should be sent. There's amounts to the far right, which is the amount of that particular box. And then at the very top bottom, there will be a total due.
So the digital part of the media campaign is billed kind of in one chunk on this document?
Yes, it is. Our software was not built for digital. It was built for broadcast. And it's a sticking point for us, but we had to find a way to make it work within here. So it's not as pretty as we would like, but that's exactly what it is. All the digital is on one campaign invoice.
Perfect. And for the record, this is page 1 of exhibit 4. I'm going to scroll down so that we can have you walk through one of the radio ones as well. This is page 17 of exhibit 4. And would you just walk us through this invoice, please?
Yeah, the top part is basically the same thing, except you can see it's got the logo of the radio station on it. It has the month that we're billing for. It's addressed to TAMG Realty, shows where to submit payment. But you can see on the radio that it actually shows the air date, the air time, the description, the time that it was ordered. Like on the first one is 687B. You can see it ran at 1059A, which is in that parameter. The ad ID is like we talked about before. This one is WSB first time buyer. And there is the rate of the spot. You add them all up. I think this is broken out by day part, each part of the invoice. But then you total it all, and that is the total due for that radio station for the month.
And were these invoices produced at TAMG?
Yes, they were done monthly.
How many of these invoices of the 42 pages were paid by TAMG?
If these are all 2021, then none of them were paid.
Getting into payment, will you walk us through an overview of TAMG's failure to make payments?
Sure. I told you they tended to pay late. But we noticed once it got to 90 days, we started contacting them. And in May, we were told that she had sent 2 checks that totaled about $140,000. And it was sent to the station. The station sent it via FedEx to our lockbox, and it was lost. We never saw the checks. About that time, we had this catastrophic computer event. Basically, our computers were hacked and it was really ugly, and we lost all access to a lot of what we did every day for about a month. So we could not actually see the bank, see our lock boxes, see what was in there. When we got back fully operational, the 1st of July, we saw that those checks had not been received. So the salesperson talked with Miss Gray about that and asked her to make them good. And she asked for a little more time to see if they would come through. And eventually she told us she could not make those checks good because she had to use that money to pay salaries and other expenses that had come up.
Tell me about some other promises that TAMG made concerning payments.
Ms. Gray indicated to us that she knew the amount was due. She said at one point, and I don't remember the date, that she would send us $20,000 on Friday, and we didn't get it then. And then we were told, well, 20,000 will be next week. We got several broken promises to pay. Finally, we scheduled a meeting with Ms. Gray and the salespeople and people from finance, which is me, my boss, to talk about what can we do to get this amount paid. I mean, this is a lot of money now, and all of the promises to pay, have not been honored. And at that point, she told us that, she couldn't make those checks good. We got the same information about expenses and salaries. We offered a payment plan, which is what we'd always rather do than to have to go to a third party, is to work out something. And usually that'll help preserve a relationship too. And I was under the impression that she would agree to a payment plan. Then we didn't hear from a while, and then we received a letter that said the payment plan was not suitable, but she was sure we could come up with something that would work. And then we never heard anymore, and we ultimately turned it over to our attorneys.
And around what month was that when you finally terminated services?
Right after the meeting, we terminated services, which was early August, because we knew at that point we should not continue to grow a debt that she didn't seem to be willing to pay.
Thank you. And just a point I wanted to clarify real quick, again, back to Exhibit 4, which is on your screen, and you can look through them if you need. These are just for the digital advertising campaign, correct? As in the Frank Ski things that we discussed earlier are not a part of these invoices. Is that correct?
I don't remember that. I will tell you that when we first put together the total due of the $565,000, it did include Frank Ski, and then we reduced it by the Frank Ski endorsement. But I'll be glad to look through everyone if you want me to.
Yes, please, if you would.
This is Exhibit 4.
Yes, ma'am.
That is correct. There are no invoices for Frank Ski endorsement included in Exhibit 4.
Thank you, Ms. Carson.
And what does that mean, the Frank Ski endorsement? What would I be paying for if I were getting his endorsement?
Frank Ski is a well-known.
I know who he is. I mean, I don't know him personally. I just have heard of Frank Ski. I know he's a radio guy.
What you would be getting instead of a recorded commercial, like some of these that we talked about, is Frank Ski saying, hey, you need to go by and see my buddies at TAMG Realty. It's more of a personal endorsement.
Okay, not meaning he's on TV, but on his radio show, he'd be saying, hey, and next up we have this person I'm gonna be talking to. But before I interview my next guest, I just want to give a shout out to my favorite #1 best real estate company in Metro Atlanta, TAMG. That's right, TAMG.com. But it's Frank Ski saying it as opposed to just an ad.
That's it.
Big audience, persuasive salesperson, et cetera. Okay, and that's nothing we're talking about here today.
That
I
is-
mean, we just talked about it, but whatever cost was incurred or bill was sent, that's not what we're working through today.
That's correct. Your
Okay.
Honor. Yes. All of our amounts are exclusive of the Frank Ski. But just to confirm on that point, since we were hitting on it, can you confirm that Ms. Gray actually did an interview with Frank Ski at one point? Okay, thank you. Carson, I'm going to point your attention to what is marked Plaintiff's Exhibit 5. And if you could just tell me what this document is, please.
Yeah, this is a cash statement. It is basically a summary of everything that is owed to Cox Media Group by a particular client. In this case, it's by TAMG Realty. The date on it is September 9 was the date this was pulled, and it covered the period July 26th through September 9. So what would outline any new invoices or payments made during that time. And you can see the previous balance was 471,602. We invoiced 93,544. We have received no payments during that time. And the new balance was 565,147.40. And then the bottom part of this is broken down by type. CMG Atlanta is the digital portion of the campaign. And then you have WALR and WSB, the 2 radio stations.
Now, this document does have some of the Frank Ski endorsements as well. These are all of the invoices, is that correct?
That is correct.
Tell me how you tracked TAMG's past balances, both with the ski endorsement, without. How does your office track that?
Excel spreadsheets. We can put together the information, slice and dice it, and we were able to say, okay, here's everything that they owe. And I think maybe I did another tab that this is with Frank Ski, or this is just Frank Ski, and this is the amount without the Frank Ski costs.
And did your office do that in this case?
Yes.
Would you take a look? I haven't introduced it yet, but if you could look at Exhibit 6 and tell me what that document is.
This is the Excel spreadsheet referenced where we, this particular one does not have Frank Ski endorsement costs included. It shows all outstanding invoices for 2021, excluding Frank Ski, the date of the invoice, what the amount of it was, and then it calculates the interest based on 1.5% per month.
And this was created by your office for this matter, is that correct? Your Honor, at this point, I'd like to tender Exhibit number 6.
All right, it's admitted based on that foundation.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's up on the screen now. So Ms. Carson, if you could just read, sorry, it's small, tried to fit the spreadsheet onto one page. Up there where my cursor is, just the title of this slide.
Yes, wait a minute, am I looking at invoice balances emitting? No.
Yes, ma'am, that one right there.
Where your hand is. Their invoice balance is omitting Frank Ski.
And just explain what this document is.
We get this information right from our software and can put it in this form. It shows the advertiser, the billing month, the invoice number, the date of the invoice, and the balance of the invoice, which in this case was full invoice amounts. And then we show the date 30 days from the invoice date, and that's just a formula. And because you don't start charging interest until after it gets past 30 days based on our terms and condition, shows the interest rate per year. And then in that little green square, you can change the date and all the formulas. The formulas are based on the date and the length of time. And it shows principal, rate, time, accrued interest. You can see the principal due is $444,540. Accrued interest over this period of time is $6,553. So the total principal and interest due $631,093.
And I just wanted to be very specific and confirm here. What is the amount past due currently by TAMG as of today, May 4th, 2023?
With interest or without?
Let's do both.
Okay, excluding
Carson.
Frank Ski.
Yes, ma'am.
Without interest, it is $444,537.40. With interest included, it is $631,093.
Thank you, Ms. Carson.
So the reason why the numbers aren't matching up quite right, by which I mean only somewhere else it was a $560,000 that had Frank Ski baked into it. He's expensive. So if we back out Frank Ski, then we're down to the 444.
That is correct.
And then this interest figure is based solely on the 444, no interest on Frank Ski because Frank Ski's not in there.
That's correct.
Okay. And the reason why on Exhibit 6, there are multiple entries for a particular month is they are for different things. Like one of them would be digital, one would be radio.
You'd have two from radio, actually. If they had two radio, WALR would have one invoice, WSB would have one invoice, and digital would have one invoice.
Okay.
And Ms. Carson, those invoice numbers correspond to the same invoice numbers that were sent to TAMG. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Carson, I don't have any other questions for you at this point. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, Your Honor, may Ms. Carson be excused?
In just a sec. So if we look at what's on the screen, the column over on the right in we'll call it a box that says as of 5/4/23, there's a column labeled time. That would be the number of years. So for that first entry, it's basically 2.2 years, which would be the 793 days. And that gets you your interest calculation.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yes, you may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, I'll turn it back over to Ms. Godfrey.
All right. Ms. Godfrey, you want to call your next witness?
Your Honor, that concludes our presentation for the day. It concludes our case. In light of the evidence presented, we would ask the court enter judgment in the amount of $631,000. Let me just say the numbers: 631,093 and 23 cents. That's as of May 4th, plus post judgment interest accruing according to the statute.
All right. Anything else?
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. Ms. Gray, do you have any questions about what we talked about or anything that you want to add? Again, it won't be evidence because that's not a role you get to play in this process, but you're here. I don't want to ignore the fact that you're here. And so I'm happy to listen to what you want to say as long as you understand the context in which I'll be receiving what you have to say. You don't have to say anything at all, but if you want to, I'm happy to listen.
Okay, Your Honor.
All right, let me take that spotlight off right there. Then I will close out the evidence. What I would like you to do, Mr. Morris or Ms. Godfrey, is to prepare in Word format a proposed judgment and get that to Ms. Niles. I will review it, review my notes, and in particular, Exhibit 6. Make sure I'm comfortable with it, and I will take it from there.
Thank you, Your Honor. We actually have a proposed order ready. Perhaps I should have mentioned that. I'm happy to email it or.
Yeah, if you would email it in Word format to Ms. Niles, that would be great.
We will do so. Thank you.
All right. Anything else on behalf of your client, Ms. Godfrey?
No, Your Honor. Thank you for having us today.
You're welcome. You'll take care of Ms. Adamson?
Yes.
Great. All right. Ms. Gray, anything more from you? You're very quiet today.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here.
Really don't know what to say or do, so.
Okay. Sometimes silence is the best approach in a situation like that. All right. Well, I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you.